What is up, guys? Loan Officer Mark coming back to you. Welcome back to Real Talk with Brian Poduska. We have an unbelievable guest. We have an unbelievable topic to roll out for the entire month. We are talking conditional versus unconditional, both commitments and relationships. And I've been thinking about it these last couple of days. I am realizing there are very few, but the ones that I do have are super important to me. I guess that's at the bedrock of unconditional. Let's get ready to talk real talk. Let's go.
All right, I was just jamming in the music. What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to Real Talk with me, Brian Poduska. We have some awesome guests, singular today, and awesome co-host. As you saw, Mark, thank you for that awesome intro. I appreciate you. And we have a pretty cool topic that we're going to talk about today, and that is conditional versus unconditional. I'm going to leave it at that because you can apply that to relationships. You can apply that to many different things. So the state of conditional versus unconditional is what we're going to dive into. It's a new month, a new topic, and that is our topic of the month. This is Real Talk with Brian Poduska. I am the owner of Real Property Management Focus, where we focus on your real estate investments. We are a full-service property management company, full-service brokerage, as a matter of fact, real estate brokerage. Focusing on property management, we also do sales. We also do purchases. So investors are our key clientele. We have some pretty cool tools that we use with our investors to analyze properties. It's called, what the heck is it called? I totally forget. Wealth Optimizer is what it's called. Sorry about that, guys. So Wealth Optimizer looks at property from multiple different angles, not just cash flow, and looks at all the different ROI and metrics that you as an investor would look at. So I came flying in today before the start of the show. Unfortunately, I haven't had a ton of time to prep, but I am catching my breath. So I'm glad I made it before we started. Without much further ado, Mark, why don't you come on in, say hello. What's up, my friend?
Man? What's
How are
up?
you?
Man, I am good. I am actually amazing. But part of the reason why I'm feeling amazing is I've had some really good kind of reconnection moments with a lot of people. And I'm just going to put this out there before we go too much further. There's a lot of people that are kind of struggling right now. It feels like seasonal depression, or like it's just the gears and grind of COVID is getting to people. So if you haven't touched base with someone, you've been thinking about them, go ahead and reach out to them. I've had a couple of amazing conversations, and really they were very much needed. So I am good. I'm excited. We are in Q4 now. All of a sudden, we've got a ton going on in real estate. And as much as it's a good time, it's also that in and of itself has been a struggle. And so I guess with that being said, man, like conditional versus unconditional commitments in my line of work, man, I'm realizing there's very few, but the ones that I have, it's like, it's not me if I don't have them, right? But these are a lot of conditional or unconditional commitments to myself. So I'm excited about the topic, man. I wish Kendra was here. She is always a pleasure to look at and be in any conversation with her. But what do you think, man? We've got an amazing guest. Why don't you give her a little introduction, and let's bring her in because she is going to be a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to circle back on that topic you brought up there, Mark, because you've had some accolades. I'll call them some fantastic accolades that have come your way, and that's the payoff for a lot of the hard work that you've been doing all year long, and the prep work before that, which underlying all that is conditional, or in most cases, most likely unconditional relationships and business partners. So look forward to a little bit deeper into that topic with you and our guests. So Lennon, why don't you bring on our fabulous guest today? Hi, Miss Kristen Metcalf. How are you?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Doing fantastic. Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
For sure. Yeah, so we normally have two co-hosts and we have multiple guests. You get the honor of being our focal guest today, which
welcome to the hot seat.
Well, you listen, when you've got perfection, you don't need to have anyone.
Boom, look at that. You nailed it. Nailed it right there. Awesome. Well, and Chrissy actually, so yeah, little backdrop. Kendra has a corporate event today that she can't be the co-host today for. So we have a bullpen lineup that we go to every once in a while when things happen business-wise or personally that we can't have a co-host or a guest. So Christy very kindly volunteered to be in our bullpen and called in the lefty. I don't know if you're really lefty, but a baseball reference, right? Brought you in from the bullpen. Okay, well, we're bringing in the flame-throwing righty. All right.
I know.
So, Christy, why don't you tell the audience who you are, give a little bit of background on yourself. I know we talked and had a great conversation about your very well-rounded background. So tell us all those things. Tell us your why as to why you're doing what you're doing right now, because I want to go deeper on that as well.
I'd love to. Yeah. So I like to say that I had an arranged career. My parents sort of molded and shaped me at the early age of around 12 to go to college, get a great job, and then live the rest of your life in this happy bliss. And I did that. I followed the exact rules I was supposed to. And 12 years into my corporate career, I hated it. And I said, I got to do something else. And I have to admit that comes with a lot of guilt and, oh my gosh, am I letting people down? And some people would look at my life and say, you have an amazing life. Why would you want to leave? And I really did want to do something on my own and have freedom and flexibility and to sort of make my mark. So 20 years ago, I've reached the 2-decade mark. I left corporate. I started a consulting business. I have worked with amazing companies like Boeing Airplanes and Safelite Auto Glass and Valvoline Motor Oil, big companies around the world. And I help them in leadership development and then sales. So really aligning their processes and systems to make revenue and figure out the gaps and the holes in their business. And so a couple years ago, about 3.5 years ago, I pivoted my business and really started focusing on small businesses, entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, because there's a lot of money to be made out there, but they don't know how to make it. And I love helping them so that they have the life and the business that they want on their terms.
Well, that's awesome, because we were talking on the phone the other day. That is the wheelhouse of the audience that we serve, right? So the difference and real talk, hashtag the difference, hashtag real talk. We are all about the small business, the entrepreneur, putting some spotlight on those individuals, and really talking business topics that are relevant to those of us who own businesses, right? So that is awesome. Love to hear that. I also love the background too. You and I share a similar background in that was in big corporate America I was a little bit longer than you, but you got out, you pulled the parachute quicker than I did. You're smarter than me. But yeah, now you've been doing it for 20 years. I haven't been doing it quite that long, but I love that background and I tell people I would never trade that. And you mentioned the traditional upbringing where your parents taught you well, right? They said get an education, go to college, get a good job. And then it's really up to us as individuals and people to evolve to that next level, if that's what's right for you, right? And it does take a huge leap of faith. It does take a big risk. I mean, nothing happens in life without a good amount of risk. Mark has a very similar story in that, talk about taking risk. Like he just uprooted and just replanted roots here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area without having a network or a safety net to fall back into. And it took him a year or so to get his feet in place, but man, he's kicking butt now. So I love stories like that. So love to hear it, and thank you for sharing. We'll get a little bit deeper into that as we go. Leadership development and sales. So those are a couple of things that are a little important to somebody who's starting a business.
It's crucial. And just a little. And I think, the interesting part that I see is, especially over these last 3.5 years of working with new business owners who have come from the corporate space, and Brian, you can chime in on this one, is I feel like when we are in corporate, we're very good at doing a job, but we don't know how to run a business. And that's what I've seen more than anything. We have a whole staff of people surrounding us that their whole job is to help us be successful, right? It's a team atmosphere. Then we get out into the real world of business ownership, and you are the accountant, you are the tax person, you are the salesperson, you're the business development, you're everything. And I think that that's really hard for people to juggle. And, I was lucky enough that I started my career in sales. I was born and raised in Kentucky. My first sales job was in Dallas, Texas. I was selling to manufacturers. I was selling chemicals. And so I was in Bell Helicopter, Texas Instruments, paint manufacturers, Mary Kay Cosmetics. And, the interesting part about it was, even though I had a 10-year foundation of selling and then sales leadership, when I branched out on my own for the first time, I was terrified to sell myself. And I think people are surprised to hear that, because I had awards on my walls. I had, $1 million contracts. And yet I was so scared to sell myself and what value I brought to the table. And I really see that show up a lot. I mean, you have to have grit. I talk about, you have to fail every single day. I see people being held back by, what will people think? What will people say? What if they reject me? What if they say no? What if I totally bomb it? And I'm like, do it fast, do it early, get it over with. You'll survive. Keep going.
Yeah, totally. Failure is, you don't, especially in the corporate world, right? And you mentioned you're in a job or you're in a role, yep. And that is usually pretty myopic. I was lucky enough to come up in a company that actually encouraged you and promoted you based on taking risks and going to some different functions and getting a well-rounded background. But even that doesn't prepare you for, like you said, wearing every single hat that you can imagine as a business owner and an entrepreneur, sole proprietor, whatever that makeup may be. So yeah, I think that's a great point. And, if you're not, you don't, in corporate America, you don't fail as often as you do in business ownership. So inherently in that is you're just not growing as much.
That's right.
In that sort of
it's very easy to become complacent, and then 10 years later you're like, how did I get here? And I remember 20 years ago when I said I was leaving corporate, it wasn't the buzzword. People weren't doing it like they are now. And I remember telling friends and family, and the look of shock and awe, and they're like, oh my gosh, why would you give up this sweet spot? You could be the one to rise to the top. And
what are you doing, you dumbass? What are you thinking?
I know, that's exactly what it was. And then they said, what if you fail? And I really had not thought that through completely, because I'd never failed at anything. And I just said, well, if I fail, then I go get another job. I mean, it was just that simple. Like, there's a job out there that will hire me, but people are terrified to fail. And, when I work with clients, they're like, well, how do I pick up the phone and call someone to do a cold call? And I'm like, you pick up the phone, you dial the number, and you say, hi, and they're just deer in the headlights. Like, I don't know how. I think that we get consumed with, I don't know how. And a confused mind eliminates action, right? So if I think I don't know how to do it, then it holds me back from actually doing it. I'm like, go do it. Walk into some companies, have a business card, try it out, say whatever you want. I mean, people don't know who you are. You could walk in and say you are doing anything and there to sell anything, and they would never know, right? So have fun with it, commit to the process, not the result, and just, really, if you're committed to succeeding, then that commitment will override any fear that you have.
No doubt. And I like, let's take that cold call, right? That example. And let's tie it into, conditional versus unconditional, and how, and so small example like that, right? A conversation, and, this is somewhat of a rhetorical question, but if you approach that conversation as conditional or unconditional, what's your odds of succeeding if you do it conditionally versus non-conditional?
Yeah. Well, and I talk to a lot of my clients about they many times will talk about relationships, but many times they'll say, I started my own business and my family's not supporting me the way I thought that they would, or I thought that they should, or my friends aren't there to support me. And I'm very quick to say that even the love we have for ourselves, because that's really where it comes from, it has conditions placed on it, right? I'm only a success if I get 5,000 clients, I have 1 million followers, I do this. Like, we put so many conditions even on ourselves around how we love ourselves and what we talk about success. And people, we do that with other people, right? We look at them, and somebody said the other day, I was talking to someone, and they're like, I've had my business for 7 years. And I said, that's fantastic. Like, you've really made it over that hump of 5 years. But she's made $5,000 in 7 years. And I thought, well, that's her measurement of success. It's not mine. It's not yours, and she is thrilled about it. She's happy about it. And so therefore, that's fantastic. But I do think in business, we have conditional relationships, with clients, with our spouse, with our loved ones, with our friends. I see it all the time in business. Like, oh, I'm a faithful follower until you screw up 10 times in a row. And then I'm going to bail and go somewhere else. And I really find today that it's hard to keep that unconditional client. I really do. I don't see it often.
I think part of that is really just the new kind of world that we live in, and that instant gratification. And if we don't get what we're looking for, then we can move on to the next one. And I think that's what's so interesting, is our kind of lack of commitment to commitment. God, that just came out, right?
So true.
Oh my God. God, that
it's so true though. I said it at a meeting this morning. We are pleasured 24 hours a day. We never have to be uncomfortable, ever. We have 5,000 channels on the TV. We have Netflix that's always there providing some sort of pleasure. We have food delivered by Grubhub. Literally, we are never uncomfortable.
Call me out like that?
No, but think about it. Think about it. 4 years ago, I had this amazing assignment over in Ethiopia, Africa. And I was an ambassador for one of the largest aerospace companies. And I was working with Ethiopian Airlines. And to go into truly a developing country and not have the luxuries that we have here, the simple luxuries. And I remember working in a corporate headquarters, and there was no toilet paper. And I think about that, right? Like, no toilet paper. And I would take the toilet paper from the Marriott that I was staying in to go to work every day. And you coveted it. You wouldn't even leave it in the bathroom because people would steal it. And so then you come home and you've got Walmarts that stay open 24 hours a day. You can buy anything fingertips on Amazon and have it delivered 24 hours later. It's crazy to think about what we have around us at all times of the day. And our lack of commitment, right? Mark, you said it.
When it came out and it added up, it was just too much for me I have a pretty small head. It was just too much. It started exploding. Exactly. Brian's over here with the same. I've never seen Brian this quiet. So he is taking this all in.
Well, I'm gonna be full disclosure here. I'm trying to because like I said, I was out in the field today, hence why I'm not all I'm not quite dressed up today. Got my hands dirty, and they're still dirty. So I'm out there trying to post on Facebook and put on a Messenger and put on my story. So I think I just did that. But yeah, so this topic, and you guys are going back and forth on today's society, right? And the kind of this instant gratification society that we're in. And unfortunately, I was just falling into it, putting stuff on Facebook, right? That's a big driver of it. And it does, I hate to sound old fashioned here, but it feels like in today's world, it's not like quote unquote the old days. And I'm saying the old days, 5-10 years ago, where things were very much, more unconditional than they are conditional now. It always feels like, hey, yeah, I'll do that for you if you're not, if you'll do that for me, or, what hand are you going to wash if you wash my hand? So yep. It's that mentality, I think, that, is really more pervasive. And I don't know if the driver is social media. I don't know if it's the short attention span that we all have now. I'm sure it's a combination of all of that. But to that point, what do you guys do to drive more unconditional type commitments and relationships, and promote that versus having something that's more conditional?
I mean, and that's what I've been thinking about ever since you brought up the topic. And I'm thinking about it. And I mean, a majority of my relationships are 100% conditional. Like even the strategic partnerships that we talked about last month, like, it's not like we're just there because we love them. It's like, we've got to be getting something out of it, right? Whether it's learning something for yourself from that individual, whether it's partnering together to serve clients, whether it's Christy going to a business owner and helping them generate revenue and scale. You've got to have the conditional relationships. And when you really boil down to it, even in marriage, it's not unconditional, right? It's, you have to be there for them and bring the best of you. And if you do that, then yeah, you'll have my unconditional commitment, because now we're actually syncing. We're now actually moving towards a greater good and a common goal. So I'm realizing, like, and I'm good with it the more I think about it. Like, I have a bar that I set for myself in my business, because I expect that of me as a professional. I expect that from my real estate partners. I expect that from my appraisers. I expect that from my support staff, right? And if we don't have that, then we've got something that we've got to address, or else we've got to part ways, right? So, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I realize we can't rely on unconditional commitments, because if they're at your jeopardy or at your expense, why are you unconditionally committed?
So let me jump in there, if you don't mind. I want to challenge Mark on this one, because I completely 100% disagree.
Good.
That's the equivalent of the middle finger. If we could
Oh,
flash
not
that
at
up on
all.
the screen.
Not at all. I love a good debate, and I got excited when Mark said what he said, because it gives us a chance to dig into both sides. I'm not saying my side is right. I'm telling him his side is wrong, but I'm not saying mine's right. I'm just kidding. So, Mark, if you came to me one day and you said, hey, I know you've got a good business going, I've got a good business going, and I think that we could really make a big impact working together. And you pitched to me what you wanted to do. And my first three things that I responded is, how long is this going to take? How much am I going to have to do? And how hard is it going to be? In my opinion, those are the three biggest red flags you can have in getting into a partnership, because they're already setting the lowest expectations possible. And when I talk about unconditional commitment versus conditional commitment, that's what I'm looking for. And Christy, you touched on that so well when you talked about how our culture has created these demons within us that everything should be easy, quick, fast, and perfect. Nobody works through the hard part anymore. Imagine Michael Jordan telling Phil Jackson, I love to play for the Bulls. If it's not that hard, I don't have to work very long. And this, it's really easy.
You mean like Kyrie?
Do what?
Sorry.
Yeah, which is why he's not playing.
Yeah. So I do believe that, Mark, you're right. There's conditional commitments all around us, and it's okay, but I think we need to understand the difference in them. Can we succeed? Conditional commitments to me are just stepping stones.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to last forever. You got to know that going in. This is just a stepping stone to get to my next spot, because I'm not going to be able to count on this person for the entirety of my career, right? It's a season. It's like they talk about people come into your life and, they're seasonal. I believe that conditional commitments serve a purpose, and we all can benefit from that. But I think our longevity, I think that the continued growth of any organization has to be based on finding those core people that you can commit to each other unconditionally, that we are going to win this war regardless of the obstacles that come our way.
But as you say that, you said that magic word of that core, right? And that's in my defense, there are those core, right? But we live in a big community here in the DFW. There's a lot of professionals. There's a lot of really good people. There's a lot of kind of average, and there's a lot of not so good, right? And so you have to be committed to your excellence, right? And when you get to join and fuse forces with somebody else that is unconditionally committed to succeeding and bringing their best, of course, now you can actually have that unconditional commitment and relationship. But if you're not bringing your best self, then you can't expect people to be unconditionally committed to you, right?
No, I agree with that 100%. 100% I agree with that. Let me ask you all a question real quick. And Brian, I'm not trying to take this over, but this is a topic that really gets me fired up. I actually did a video on this about 2 years ago before we started the difference about this. Are honest opinions from all of you. Would a conditional person versus an unconditional person, which would be the giver and which would be the taker? Which would be the consumer and which would be the producer? If you had to categorize them both within that, what do you think?
Yeah, unconditional is giver, and vice versa for taker, right? So,
unless someone's an unconditionally self-absorbed psychopath, then I mean,
I think that. So
that's a different topic we can get into and have a lot of fun with, Mark, because we know a lot of those folks, don't we?
Yeah, we are in sales.
So my take on it really is, I believe that in the beginning, that relationships are conditional. We have conditions which must be met, and I think we always idealize this unconditional view, no strings attached. I love you no matter what, And I can say that truly, the only two people that I truly have unconditional love for are my children, right? And I've told them before, you could do something that I may not like. I will always love you, but I may not approve of the decisions and the choices you make. I think that every relationship starts conditional. Where I think it flips to the unconditional and moves into that territory is when your values are aligned, you have a high level of trust, you enjoy working with the people, and maybe they screw up, but you have that conversation. You don't just cut them off. You don't just fire them. You actually have that conversation, give them another chance, see if it was an honest mistake and if you can work through it, but you commit to a long-term relationship and partnership with them. So even though there are conditions to be met, you're still committed to doing whatever it is with them and sticking it out for the long haul until those conditions can no longer be met and you decide to move on.
Brilliant. I agree with that.
Christy, you must have listened to our last month's topic of strategic partnerships, because you just really summarized a lot of the points that we hit on last month. And that's why it really does dovetail nicely to the topic that we're talking about this month. And I think you're spot on as far as nobody, I don't want to say nobody in their right mind, but nobody who thinks logically would jump into an unconditional relationship right away, right? I mean, like you said, it evolves to the point that it becomes unconditional. And it's all those core values that Mark, you alluded to, Chris, you alluded to, that get you there, right? Mm-hmm. And those are some of the key platforms that we talked about last month, as those are the foundational things that make up a strategic partnership.
Well, have we also in our culture, Brian, gotten away from what was the guy that used to be on the commercial? And I hope y'all are old enough to remember this.
Not Mark.
We'll see.
Yeah, Mark.
Not Mark.
There's no way. It was, I can't remember what it was, but he goes, something about trust. We earn it.
Oh, E.F. Hutton, right?
E.F. Hutton. It was an E.F. Hutton commercial, right?
Well, E.F. Hutton was the guy who said it. It was, I think, some insurance company, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it was. And so I really, just watching more and more, it's like everybody thinks that they ought to be respected even before they're met, that they ought to be trusted even before they're met. And I really like what y'all are saying, because it's really helping me to see this in a different perspective, is we all have to go in expecting to earn the trust and the commitment, right?
Yep.
But I think for a lot of us, we don't even understand what that means in a way. We go in thinking that maybe it's an arrogance, or maybe it's just a lack of understanding. But I'm with this company, I'm doing this job, whatever it is, you should just trust me and you should respect me and not even question what my motives are. And I'm just not sure that plays out very well. It doesn't seem to.
Well, and I mean, I'll speak for myself, but you guys may agree with me or disagree with me. You can usually get a pretty good read on somebody if they come at you with that approach, even if it's a one hour meeting, half hour meeting, right?
Yep.
I mean, I've had meetings where people, they talk a good game, they talk about what their goals are, they talk about this, and then they right away want to jump to the next step, maybe, or it's, hey, then it's what can you do for me? How can we partner up? And what's it going to mean to me? You can usually get a pretty good read on somebody like that pretty quick.
And that happens at meetings, at networking. Like, you can feel when they're there, self-serving, rather than like they truly are there for an agenda versus just being there to be curious, helpful, and to get to know people. And that happens all day long. And it feels icky, right? When you're in those meetings, it sort of feels icky, and your conditions now start going up. You're like, oh, okay, maybe I didn't realize that was a condition, but now it is I don't want to deal with people like that.
And that's a good point, Chrissy, because once you start getting that feel, then you start immediately jumping to the conditional side. That's
exactly right. You go there automatically. Right. And you're like, I'm not doing that. I also think that in our society, right now, and I've studied generations. And so, Mark, I don't know what generation you are. Are you millennial?
Oh yeah, you don't know what generation.
Okay.
Right.
So this is really interesting because we live in such a transactional culture, right? Like it truly is transactional. But so much of the studies that I've read on millennials really is about relationships versus transaction. So it will be interesting to see how the millennials really shape the way that we look at, commitment, the way we look at condition versus unconditional. I think it will be interesting to really look at what companies do over the next 10 years with that generation really becoming the powerhouse of money makers.
I think also, Christy, that people, it's hard when you're talking about being relational versus being transactional, because being transactional makes you a lot of money right now.
Right.
And so for so many people, we're looking at the right now, and we're looking at the next 2 to 3 months. But one of the first, back in 2008, when the real estate market crashed, and I had just gotten out of mortgage to go into, I wasn't smart enough to see what was coming, but I knew something wasn't right. And I made probably the best decision I ever made in my life to get out of mortgage right before it crashed. But I started watching all these realtors and the loan officers that still were thriving, even though the market had crashed. And it was that they were relational. They had people that they could go to and count on, and they all banded together and they weathered the storm. The people that had been transactional, the people that had just been in it for the money, nobody was around anymore. They were isolated, and all of a sudden they had to go back to their day job. And so, it's that quick call. It's the microwave society that we have, that everybody's trying to, make the sale today, and not, I call it the used car salesman, because, they're just trying to sell a car. They don't care if you ever come back to them anymore. And I think you're right. I think it's going to really be telling for a lot of these companies over the next 15 to 20 years, how they sustain and their long-term growth based on how we view things, whether it's relational or transactional.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, think about our businesses, right? We're every one of us is a long-term play. Mark, I guess you could go the route of, well, just, give me volume sort of thing. But we all have to be relational in our businesses because, I mean, I guess I could get internet leads and base my business off of that, but it's more, I'm trying to get a long-term and establish a long-term trust and relationship with an investor who understands the value that we can bring longer term, right? Coaching wise, same thing. That's not I'm just going to pick up, do a quick Google search. Who's a local business coach that I can talk to? It doesn't work that way. So I think those are great points. Hey, let's take a break real quick, Lennon. I do want to give some love to our sponsors. Okay. We're talking about longer term relationships. We've got great ones with companies like Wines with an Appeal. This is Tom Rowe's company, and I don't have his read sheet in front of me, but what I will tell you is Tom offers a fundraising opportunity for companies out there, whether it's your company or a private event that you are looking to raise funds for a charity. And basically what he does is he comes in and does a wine tasting with a bit of education behind that, and has wine offerings that are very different than what you would see on your supermarket shelves or in the grocery store, the liquor store. And he walks you through, educates you, entertains you. He is a funny dude. And at the end of the thing, you get the opportunity to purchase the wines that you wouldn't necessarily get to see in the marketplace. And the beauty of this whole setup that Tom has is that all he does is cover his costs on the wine, and then any profits above and beyond that go strictly to the charity of your choice. So if you want to get a hold of Tom, call him at 214-621-5216 for more information or to schedule your event. And then our other sponsor is Liberator Health Insurance, Mr. Greg Holdberg, who is another co-host on the show. He offers the best value and affordable health care. Greg has a deal of the week that we share every week, and the one this week is he just signed up a 54-year-old accountant and his 23-year-old daughter for great coverage for only $570 per month. Now, I can tell you that if you go to the government marketplace or if you try to get a similar type program to that, it's going to cost you at least 2 times that, especially in this situation where you have a 23-year-old dependent still under your roof. So please, if you guys, it's coming up time to open enrollment period is coming up. So if you're looking at options, or heck, if you're not looking, but entertaining something different, perhaps a bit of cost savings, call Greg at 214-886-4688. All right. Awesome.
Man, our show sponsors, Brian, they are so important. So I'm so glad you brought them up. Man, they are such a pleasure to be around and such good people.
They really are. And they've been with us for the long haul, right? So we talk about these relationships and conditional versus unconditional. They've been with us for the long haul. Greg has evolved from being a sponsor to he was a guest. He sees the power in what we're doing and what we're trying to do with the difference. He decided to jump in with the sponsorship, and then he said, you know what, I want to be a co-host. Tom was very similar. He was on as a guest when we first started as Real Talk. So he came on and walked us through what his program is, and he's like, okay, I want to be a sponsor. He is also part of the Difference community, so there may be more opportunities to see Tom live and in person on the air, but I do highly recommend both those individuals. They're both great folks, and who doesn't like to drink wine and raise funds? I mean, pretty awesome, right?
My friends know you can't say no to a drink.
That's right. That's right, especially for a good cause. So
that's right.
So let's pivot back to our topic, right? So conditional versus unconditional, and just out of curiosity with you guys, how long does it typically take for that evolution to occur for you? And I not specific timing, but because some relationships that you have from a business perspective start as a friend relationship, so that may accelerate that relationship quicker to be more unconditional. But typically, how long does it take for you guys to foster those type of relationships and evolve that relationship from conditional to unconditional?
Man, that's a good question. And I don't know that any one of us can really pinpoint an amount of times, but it seems like I would say it's got to be at least 5 is my lucky number and my favorite number. But I feel like once you've had 5 like interactions, you've spent some time with each other during those, you really get a sense of who that other person is. And now you are able to make that decision of, do they reflect my values? Are they a good reflection of me and my business? And I think, I don't know if it's 5, but I'm going with that one for now.
I think also that you got to, Brian, I know that you're in a lot of networking groups. We do the difference here, and we're meeting a lot of people through these shows, and we're getting to know them. Meeting Christy today, and I think we've met before, Christy, but just getting to hear, I think you can start to get a pretty good sense before business ever starts on who you have a chance to develop that with. But I think also it's when you build that relationship, like you and I have, Brian, there's a lot of weight that goes to that. If you introduce me to someone, or I introduce you to someone, or we may just happen to connect with them in the same circles. And I think that you can watch that performance over time. I'm not sure that a lot of people are very good at vetting the people they get into business with. I think sometimes the numbers cloud the vision, and they forget to do their due diligence on who they're partnering with, and go a little bit deeper into it before they even meet them. And then especially, once they have met and they need to kind of verify some of the information they've collected. I think that, again, Mark, I agree with you. I don't think there's a number, but I think you can accelerate the process and give yourself a little bit more, I guess I'd call a comfort zone on who I'm going to try to partner with.
Yeah, well, and that's a dovetail that I was looking for, Lennon, was you can't, and you're right, Mark, you can't put a time frame on it. And you can't, because it all depends on how you were introduced to said partner, how you met that person. So there's accelerants or acceleration factors, right? And Lennon, you're absolutely right. I'm going to trust somebody a lot more if one of you guys in the family here referred them. Christy, you were referred to me by Michelle Burleson. Michelle is part of the Difference community as well. I know Michelle, personal friend of our family, and our boys played hockey. So, you talk about all those different things that go into a relationship. And then, oh, by the way, we happen to start our own businesses right around the same time frame, and therefore got introduced and introduced each other to other great business owners, right? So how that all evolves certainly accelerates the trust factor, which then, inherently leads to more unconditional versus conditional relationships. So,
Yep.
They always say you are who you surround yourself with. And, to some extent that's true. So that is a great point, Landon. And I think, that's a testament to what we're all doing here with the Difference, right? And the community that you started and is growing exponentially as we get more and more business owners introduced through channels like my show, or our show. It's not my show, it's our show. And other channels through, the Facebook page, and as people introduce the other business owners to you and to the Difference. It's pretty awesome to see where we've come over the last, what's it been, a year and a half? Almost, heck, we're approaching 2 years, aren't we?
It's 2 years. It was 2 years on the first. So we've been at it 2 years now.
Time flies when you're having fun and dodging viruses, right?
Right.
That and putting out fires, right? I mean, we're all independent business owners. And Christy, I have a question for you. So you mentioned you're a business coach, business strategist. So you see, I'm assuming, business owners in probably far more verticals than I could ever see. Have you been able to pinpoint like what it is about somebody that allows them to actually become unconditionally committed to their own business? Is there like, you've talked with so many, like, can you expand on that? Because you probably see the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. And I love the question of how many times does it take? Because there really isn't that number. And like Lennon said, I agree. I don't think that a lot of people do due diligence and their homework before entering in a relationship with someone. So, I work with clients I don't work with clients. I meet a lot of people who are very sales oriented, but it's all about them. It's not about serving the client. And you can smell that and you can see that from a mile away. And they tend to have very transactional relationships. So somebody needs something, it's at the best price, they get the sale, right? Sort of by default. But the people that I work with that have these long relationships, and I actually talk about that because for years I worked with clients and I didn't just work with them on a project. I was a consultant for Boeing for 14 years. I was at Valvoline for 9 years. I was at BASF Chemical for 7 years. So long term, I actually became a part of their culture. And I really think it is about going in. I talk about trust a lot, but I base it on two things. There's competency and then there's character, right? And you have to realize which one you want, maybe both, and what that looks like in each situation you have a relationship with someone. So, for instance, I'm not looking for a business person to walk my dogs. So they have to have the competency and the character to get my dogs out and get them back. But to come in and help me with my business and go into clients and represent me, that takes a different level of competency and character that I'm looking for, because those transactions are much higher. And you can just tell it. I mean, we've all been in those situations, like you talked about, Brian, the family, right? There are people that when they pick up the phone, Michelle sent me a text, was like, hey, I need you. Yes, I trust her explicitly. And so whoever she introduces me to sort of looks like that. I've also been very aware of being in rooms where people have what they call a large following, and understanding their people are not my people, and it's okay to walk away. Right? I don't want to do business the way they're doing business. I don't want to attract the clients they're attracting. And I don't care if they have 10 million followers. That's not the game that I'm going to play. And it's okay for us to be in the same room, but knowing they have a set of people that they attract and I have a set of people that I attract. And really, it is about those relationships. I tell my clients all the time that if you want a client, the quickest and easiest way, dig into your network. And I just had a call this week and she's like, I feel very guilty about digging into my network. And I said, that door that opens for you, though, that introduction will shave months and years off of what it will take to get in that door. And so don't be afraid to ask for that introduction. I actually call them introductions, not referrals, because referrals implies business and introductions means, hey, I just met some great people I'd like to introduce you to.
I'm so glad you just said that. That is literally like every time I'm talking to a referral, anytime, or a referral partner, anytime I'm talking to a client, when you sit, people don't know what a referral is. And so introductions, that is key. And that character is at the bedrock of everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's, I guess it really is fun in a way to go about life and business and meet new people and be able to say, like, you don't fit within my expectations, and you're not that relational person that I can see myself building a long-term relationship with. Yeah. And there's so much power in that. And that, I think, is one of the biggest drivers of employees going out and starting their own business, because you realize there's only so much life there's only so much life to live. And if you're not living it on your own terms, it's only how worth living is it, right?
That's right. Well, and I tell my clients, I'm like, you are the driver of your business, right? If you're doing work with clients you don't enjoy, that aren't paying you what you're worth, that mistreat you, that is your problem, not theirs, right? You said yes to them. And I teach them how to do a quick audit, 15 minutes, and really ask the questions that are important and pivotal to their business, to, is this the right person for me or not? And one of the things that I have clients do is I help them create a perfect prospect scorecard. And half of it is objective and then half of it is subjective. And I'll be honest, like my subjective part is if I would meet you at Starbucks and I'd have coffee with you for an hour, if you're coachable, if you are hungry to learn, if you're committed, then I want to work with you. But if I can't sit with you at Starbucks for an hour, I probably don't want to take you on as a long-term client. And that is okay to say no and walk away. And when we're in an interview situation, they're interviewing us, we're interviewing them. It's the same in business. I don't have to say yes to every client and they don't have to say yes to me. It's okay to walk away and let them find somebody that is going to be a better fit for them.
Christy, I love that you said that because I had a question that I wanted to ask you, and I'm not looking for free advice, but
let me ask you.
How often do you see when you're interviewing people, or is it a problem in the professional world that too many people, being a transactional minded, are trying to be everything to everybody instead of being true to themselves, what they do and what they love doing, and attracting those people that value those characteristics? I mean, is that a fair statement?
That is an accurate statement. In fact, I was doing a talk to a Chamber of Commerce a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about marketing, and I had a vice president of marketing sitting in the audience, and I said, there's nothing that will make a speaker squirm more than to have a vice president of whatever it is you're speaking about sitting in the audience. They're going to be your toughest client in there. But I was telling them, I'm like, I am not a jack of all trades. I don't do social media marketing. I don't put the marketing strategy together, but I can tell you all the foundational pieces that go into helping you have a good marketing strategy. And that is knowing exactly who your client is, knowing what your offer is and what problem you're solving and what the value is that you're bringing to a client. So you don't have to be great at everything. You just have to be really good and know what you're good at and sell that.
Right.
And you got to be good at attracting those other pieces, right? Because as much as we need to know majority of aspects of our business, we shouldn't expect ourselves to be the best person to solve that. We just need to be able to attract those people. And again, a lot of that comes back to your character, because that's one of the quickest, best ways for you to attract good talent.
Yep. Well, and one of the questions that I ask myself and I ask all of the people that I work with, what do you want to be known for? Right. And the most frustrating restaurant I absolutely hate going into is Cheesecake Factory, because the menu is 100 pages long. And I go into Cheesecake and I order the exact same thing every single time I go in there, because I just can't deal with the 25 pages. But you look at Five Guys, you look at Chick-fil-A, you look at companies that exactly what they stand for, what you're going to get when you walk through the door. And I believe that we are so hectic and so scattered and so much information thrown at us that we have to stand out in the sea of bland. And you cannot do that when you're trying to be good at everything. You have to pick what you love doing and put your stake in the ground and let everybody know that that's what you do best.
And Chrissy, I want to go back to something you said probably about 10 minutes ago now, something like that. And it was one word, and it was the word culture. Yeah. And I think culture's so important, whether, I've seen it on the macro scale, being part of a large corporation. And I've seen how cultures that don't mesh become very much a conditional relationship versus an unconditional relationship, right? I used to be a leader in the group that at the company I used to work for, is a manufacturing company, and we had third-party manufacturers that were smaller or some larger, and each one, we had our culture, they had their culture, and if those cultures didn't mesh, then you could tell right away that this is going to be a rocky road, and this is going to be this is going to be driven by contracts, and it's not going to be driven by relationships and everybody pulling in the same direction unless it's written in a contract.
That's right.
And that was one of my roles in the corporate world. So saw it on a macro level. And then, now as you get into different relationships with different individuals and different business owners, whether you have a written culture or it's your own personality or it's your own how you go about business, it is a visual and a feelable, if you will, if that's a word, culture, right?
Yep.
So when you sit down with folks and you meet them and you get to know somebody better, you can tell, all right, we've got culture mesh or we don't. And either we're going to do business together. Sometimes you're forced to do business together in some cases, right? And if that's the case and you're doing business with somebody who's your personal culture or your business's culture doesn't mesh with, yeah, you better have some good underlying contracts, because it's going to go south pretty quick.
And it's always a contentious relationship. One of the things, as you were talking, Brian, I've worked with so many large organizations, but when we talk about conditional and unconditional, I see it many times with organizations that have unions. And there are organizations that have unions that you would never know it, because they have that unconditional respect and relationship with one another, that it's about getting the job done. And then I've worked in companies where it's been a very contentious relationship. And we actually used a book at one of the organizations I consulted with called Blood in the Water. And it was really about this relationship in the organization between the union and the non-union, and how basically it was so infiltrated with the, entitlement and not doing anything outside of the scope of their contract, that it literally was like pulling the organization down. And yet Southwest Airlines, has a huge organization, and Herb Kelleher always set the tone that there is no difference between us, right? That we are all working to make Southwest Airlines profitable and successful for the good of the people internally, whether they have a contract and a union or whether they don't. And I really see this unconditional and conditional show up in organizations like this.
And one of the, always written about, and it goes back to that C word, culture, right?
That's right.
Southwest Airlines has it. They always have. And
amazing.
They're one of those in that upper tier that everybody's kind of shooting for, right? And there's several other companies out there that you can name a handful of them that they are the shooting star example of how to drive culture through an organization. That's on a large scale. That applies to a small business and a sole proprietor as well, right? I mean, it's
absolutely
same principle.
Well, and I've been hired to come in and help with strategy. And I tell my clients, big companies, I'm like, culture will trump strategy any day of the week. So you can pay me to create this great strategy, but if the people inside your organization don't like each other, they can't get along, they can't work together, your strategy means absolutely nothing. It's worth less than the paper it's written on.
So let me ask this, Christy. We were talking before about trying to be all things to all people versus being true. I don't think you can establish a culture if you're trying to be all things to all people. You're trying to appease and accommodate. And there's never a consistency in culture with that. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like whenever you're starting to get traction, you sort of like veer off to the shiny object. I was working with a client last year, and she had what she thought she wanted to focus on. She was in the early infancy stages of her business. And she diverted and was like, well, I can sell this. And I said, you can, but McDonald's can sell tacos too, but they're not known for tacos. They're known for hamburgers. Right? So you can, but what is that going to do? Divert your attention, divert your pool of interested clients. Like, it's going to be confusing to them, and confused clients never buy.
Brian, you know that I'm the king of acronyms, right? I have one for MESH too. Do you remember that one?
You're gonna have to enlighten me. You bombard me with.
No, I've got two acronyms. I've got the CARE acronym and MESH. MESH stands for Make Exceptional Shit Happen.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I thought you were going to say NSFW, not suitable for work.
No,
we have that disclaimer on our show.
Yeah, what you were just saying, Christy, it super resonates with me, because culture is at the bedrock of the company that I work with, movement, and you can see it on my shirt. Our mission statement is that we exist to love and value people and be a movement of change. And seeing a mortgage company and our unconditional commitment to loving and valuing people and being literally a movement within this country and everything that we're doing, not just in the markets we're a part of, but we have a farm in Uganda and we have hope centers in Guatemala. And it's been an unbelievable pleasure to be a part of an organization that truly lives out and believes in what you were just saying. And it is powerful to be a part of that.
And people, by the way, Mark, will work for that kind of company if it resonates with who they are at the core. They will forego money, they will forego benefits, job opportunities. I've seen it for the last 20 years. If they are truly aligned with their core values, with the organization they work for, they will stay forever and forego any of that exterior things we think is so important to them.
Why do you think that is, Christy? Is it because we feel like in a situation like that we really are making a difference? And isn't that what we really all want to do in the first place? We want to feel important.
I think that's it. We want to, I most often people leave corporate America for freedom, but it's a freedom to make a bigger impact in this world. That's what I see most often, right? To be able to do something and have a greater impact in this world than I'm currently doing, working the 60 hours a week that I am. Rarely is it about money, because anybody who started a business knows you're not going to make the money that you were making at a 20-year career. Right. So it's not the money, but it's this true drive of, many of my clients are at that mid-career stage, midlife stage. They're looking at the rearview mirror. They're like, I want to live my purpose. I want to make a greater impact in this world. I want to make the world better in the time that I have left and leave some sort of legacy behind, no matter what that looks like.
I think the only thing that makes millennials any different than the generations before is really that we realized that early, what you were just saying, and our commitment to actually building relationships in this technology world that we all have grown accustomed to, but just we need that connection, right? And it's an incredible opportunity. I think that is why, going back to what Brian was saying with Lendon and the difference in the community that you've been building, and the more and more people that we bring into the community, the more impact we're all having individually and as a whole.
Yep. Yeah, and guys, I think that's a great way to kind of summarize this whole thing, because it brings in the perspective, the difference as the underlying or overarching and principles that are behind that. Real Talk is all about bringing, individual business owners, giving some spotlight. We are out of time, so I am going to have to cut it. But this sort of discussion is exactly what's at the heart of what we're trying to do, right? And I love it. So, Christy, thank you for being a guest today. Appreciate you coming in from the bullpen on short notice. I can't tell you, this conversation was fantastic. Your background and your professionalism is fits right in exactly what we're doing. So thank you for all the value you added today. Mark, as usual, appreciate you co-hosting today, especially
always a pleasure,
carrying all of Kindra's weight on your shoulders too. We appreciate
on my back.
Kindra, I'm saying that out of love. We miss you. Sorry you couldn't make it today. Lendon, as usual, thank you for everything that you do with the difference you do for Real Talk, and even some of those awesome acronyms about making exceptional shit happen, right? So,
do it.
I'm glad we all meshed today, and look forward to carrying this conversation on to next week with conditional versus unconditional and how that applies to business and life. Until then, have yourselves an awesome weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye, guys.